Good morning. Welcome to, oh, actually, let the two people in that are waiting. They will be in. Give them one more minute and then we will start our program.
Okay.
Good morning. Welcome to our event this morning. Today our event is called Being a Veterinarian, and I have with me Dr. Balcom from the University of Maryland. Many of you in our audience have pets. According to a study last year, 68% of Americans have pets, and the estimate was 94 million cats and 90 million dogs and many, many other varieties. So Dr. Balcom has a program to talk a bit about what it's like to be a veterinarian, because many of those pet owners, especially when they were younger, thought about being in that profession. So I will turn the program over to you, Dr. Balcom. Two things before I turn over. If you would like to post on social media about this program, our hashtag is MDSTEMFest. And at the end of the program, I will be putting up our link to our survey and would appreciate if you complete a survey. So with all of that, I am turning the program over to Dr. Balcom. Thank you, Dr. Balcom.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching either today or recorded. My name is Sarah Balcom. I am a small animal veterinarian turned college instructor. I have been at the University of Maryland for 10 years now. I am the director of the undergraduate program in animal and avian sciences. And I advise a lot of pre-veterinary students on their education and also future career paths. So today I was going to share with you a little bit of what it's like to be a veterinarian, some opportunities for vets besides just clinical practice, and some of the pros and cons of going to vet school and becoming a veterinarian. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and dive right in. All right. So if you're with me on Zoom and you have access to the chat, I'm curious, what do you think a veterinarian does for a living? I'm always interested to hear what people's impressions are. I will tell you what you're thinking. We definitely do get to see some really amazing animals. So I certainly enjoyed working with the dogs and cats and occasionally even ferrets and birds that came to our clinic. And as a veterinarian at a university with a farm, I really enjoy working with our sheep and our horses and our cows. Well, what else do we do you think? Well, let me tell you what clinical vets do. So clinical vets are those vets who go to work to take care of sick animals and keep well animals healthy. And so besides working with the animals themselves, I will tell you that we spend a lot of time talking to people. We talk to other veterinarians and our technical staff. We talk to pet owners. We talk to the general public. We talk to other doctors when we have questions about complicated cases. And I tell you this because I hear a fair number of students who say, well, I don't really like people, so I think I'll work with animals. Well, in veterinary medicine, you're going to talk to a lot of people, and you can meet some really interesting folks. Every kind of person you could imagine has pets and has other types of animals, and so it's a really great place to meet people. Another thing we do is systematically solve riddles. So in the picture there, you can see a veterinarian examining an animal's gums for little subtle clues to what might be going on. So every time we examine an animal, large or small, we do a systematic exam trying to find all the clues we can about what's going on with the animal. We also do a thorough history, and that's a conversation with the animal's owner or caretaker, trying to get clues about what's going on when we're not there. So not in the exam room or not when we're doing that farm visit. We put all of this information together and we think about all of the science that we've learned, and we try and solve the riddle of what's going on with that animal. Another thing we do a lot of is reading. So it turns out that most of what you learn in veterinary medicine, just like with human medicine, will be out of date in 5 or 10 years. And that's a challenge, but also a fun part of our field. So in between appointments, sometimes in the evenings or weekends, you'll find yourself as a vet looking things up, finding out what is the latest and greatest treatment for a particular disease, what new diagnostic test might be out there, what other options might I have for my patients. So we spend a lot of time both reading in veterinary journals and also going to things called continuing education conferences, where we have experts in particular fields help us learn what's new so that we can practice the best medicine possible. Another thing we do a lot is talk on the phone and multitask. So while we spend a fair bit of time examining patients, again, in the clinic or on the farm or wherever they may be, we're going to spend probably just as much time figuring out what's going on with them, calling their owners to give them results and make future plans, and coordinating further treatment. And so you definitely will spend a lot of time on your phone and on your computer doing these things. Another thing we do a ton of is writing medical notes. We write medical notes about physical exams. We write treatment orders so that our technicians and our assistants know what we need done with the animals. We write anesthetic notes and surgery notes whenever we do a procedure. We write follow-up notes if we have an animal who's hospitalized. So as a veterinarian, you will find that you'll be writing, or these days with computers being so common, typing a lot of medical notes. In fact, one of the best things I ever learned to do in high school for my veterinary career was learn how to type really well. Another thing clinical vets do a lot is what's called rounding. So we like to work with one another, both to share information about animals that we have in the hospital. Maybe we're going to coordinate their care because I'm working in the morning and you're working in the afternoon. But also this is how we learn. And so we will get together usually once a day for some shorter rounds, and sometimes for more formal rounds, something we call grand rounds, to learn about the cases we have, update each other on what we're learning about cases, make sure we're all on the same page with treatment and prognosis information, that kind of thing. So being a clinical vet definitely involves lots of great animals. They are the start of what we do, but there's a lot of things that we do in clinical veterinary medicine. Any questions so far? So here's the thing. Veterinarians don't always work in veterinary clinics. We have a really flexible degree and a lot of opportunities to do different things with it. You'll find that about 80% of veterinarians work in a clinic or in an ambulatory practice. That's a practice where a veterinarian drives out to where the animals live. And you'll find that about 13% of veterinarians work for themselves in some manner, many of them doing what's called relief work, where they fill in when a veterinarian is sick or out on maternity leave, or maybe a practice is growing and they need to hire someone temporarily. But that leaves about 7% of our workforce doing other non-clinical roles, and some of them are really fun. So you'll see that there are a lot of veterinarians who work at different levels of government. They can work both in the legislative side of things, helping to inform new laws that might affect animal health, animal welfare, the practice of veterinary medicine, or in executive branches, which regulate how we care for our animals. So some examples of that are things like state veterinarians and state wildlife veterinarians. They're very interested in animal health, especially at the population level. You can see veterinarians who go on to get advanced training in epidemiology and work for agencies like the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. You can see veterinarians who work for the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, applying their scientific knowledge to understand research about a particular drug or device and whether it's a good choice, it should be approved for human or animal use. We have animal health programs in the United States Department of Agriculture. And we also have food safety inspectors who work in a different part of the USDA. We also have these types of roles at the state government. So lots of opportunities to apply your substantial science knowledge and your knowledge about animals in particular in government. There are a lot of veterinarians who work in nonprofits, and some of that will be clinical work. So when I give you that 80%, 13%, 7%, there is some overlap here. You can see veterinarians working in animal shelters, for example, and they may be shelter directors, they may be high volume, high quality spay-neuter program veterinarians, they may be consulting with animal shelters as a part-time either volunteer or paid position, trying to improve the health of the animals overall and make them more adoptable. You can see veterinarians working for advocacy organizations, advocating for better welfare for animals or different kinds of uses for animals or eliminating practices that are not very good for their welfare. You can see veterinarians working in educational organizations, trying to do public outreach and tell the public about, especially wildlife causes. You can see this with some overlap with things like zoos and aquaria. And you can see veterinarians working in wildlife preservation in another area called One Health, which is really interested in how animal health and human health and environmental health all fit together in one piece. You can see vets working in education. That's what I do. anywhere from agricultural high schools through colleges to specialty veterinary training, either in veterinary technician programs or in the veterinary schools themselves. And then there are veterinarians who have a substantial amount of work from working in the military. And in this role, they work in food safety. They also will inspect food, making sure that it is wholesome and safe for the military members to eat. They will do public health surveillance, again, because we have a great knowledge of population health and can certainly apply that knowledge towards human population health as well. They take care of the ceremonial animals. So think of like those parade horses that you'll see whenever the military is part of a parade. They do a lot of work caring for military and government working dogs, many of whom are deployed right now. And they take care of the pets of military families. You'll see veterinarians in research as well. Biomedical research is how we see innovation in the medical sciences. And you'll see veterinarians who both care for the animals in research and also who are researchers themselves. You can see veterinarians and actually have to see veterinarians on every animal care and use committee. And these are the committees that oversee the animal welfare when they are used in biomedical research and elsewhere. And so they're there to be an advocate for those animals. And you can see veterinarians who get special training, such as the veterinary pathologists who can read slides and tell us what's going on in the cells and tissues of a particular specimen. We have veterinarians who focus on exotics. And again, these may be exotic companion animals. So think about those pet birds or pet ferrets, pet chinchillas, but these also may be zoo animals or animals in aquaria, animals in theme parks, so places like SeaWorld or Disney, animals in sanctuaries, or animals who are part of ecotourism exhibits. There's some really neat conservation work that overlaps with exotic animal veterinary care. And actually pictured here is a veterinarian who also has a PhD in reproductive biology. And she works to help preserve endangered species by first studying them and their eggs and their sperm in the zoo setting, and then using that to help save them in the wild. So that's all of the cool stuff that veterinarians can do. So let's talk for a little bit and see what does it take to actually get into veterinary school. So I'm guessing that a lot of you who are watching this are thinking, is veterinary school right for me and what do I need to do? Well, to get into veterinary school, you will need to have completed a variety of steps before you even start the application. First of all, the veterinary schools are going to require you to take a whole sequence of what's called prerequisite courses. And these courses are the building blocks of your science education, your ability to communicate clearly, your ability to demonstrate logical and computational thinking. So this is going to include at least 2 semesters of biology, at least 5 semesters of chemistry, including both inorganic and organic chemistry, and at least a semester of biochemistry. Usually there's a semester or 2 of math, a semester or 2 of English, and then to make sure that we are the well-rounded individuals we need to be to interact so much with the public, some component of oral communication, humanities, and social sciences. Every school is a little bit different on what they require, but the core science courses and this idea that you need to have some humanities, social sciences, and communications is common to all of the veterinary schools. If you're wondering, well, what classes should I take when I get to college? In the references for this talk, I've put some links that will be helpful for you to find that information quickly. Not only do you have to take these courses, but you need to do well in them. Veterinary school is a lot of information, and the schools really want to understand that you can handle the workload there. And they understand that in part by seeing that you have a strong understanding of these basic prerequisite courses. And when I say good grades, I'm talking about an overall average of around 3.6 to 3.7, so basically an A- average or better. And in particular, a strong performance in your science classes. They really want to see that you understand this stuff. Besides just courses, the veterinary schools are very interested that you have experience in veterinary medicine. They want to see that you understand both the breadth of possibilities, all of the different species that we treat, and also all of the different career possibilities like the ones I just mentioned. They also want to see that you have depth in your experience. So in general, I will tell my students to spend at least 100 hours wherever it is that you're shadowing, interning, or working to count that as a really substantial experience. They're going to ask you for letters of recommendation. So during your college time, while you're taking these classes and getting these experiences, it's also important to cultivate relationships with the people who teach you, the people who mentor you in the veterinary setting, and others who know your leadership and character traits, so that when you apply, not only can you demonstrate that I am academically prepared for veterinary medicine, but that I am also mature in my understanding of what the field is, I am a good worker, I am an ethical person, I am good with animals, I communicate clearly, those types of things. And so again, that's something that you don't just walk up to a person in your senior year and say, hey, I barely know you, but could you give me a letter? Rather, it's a relationship that you cultivate over time so that that story about you gets told in your letters. Finally, to get in, most schools require what's called the GRE, the Graduate Record Examination. And that's a standardized test to get into further school, graduate school or professional school, much like the SAT is the test you take to get into college. All of this said, some schools are phasing out use of the GRE as an assessment tool, choosing rather to look at your experiences, your interviews and personal statements, your grades, and those types of things. And finally, before you ever apply, I really, really strongly encourage you to have a financial plan. Veterinary school is very expensive, something I'll talk about later. And if you go in not understanding what it's going to cost you and how you're going to repay those student loans, it's going to set you up for a lot of trouble later. So this is what you need to do simply to be ready to apply. Then when you apply, you will put together all of this information into a common application, just like there's a common application for undergraduate. And with that, you will write a generic personal statement about your experiences, your motivation, why you think you're particularly well qualified, and then you'll have supplemental applications for the specific veterinary schools that interest you, where you'll answer their more focused questions. So how does this break down if you're thinking of veterinary school right now? Well, if you're in high school and you think that you want to keep this as an option, there are some things you can be doing even right now. First of all, find universities with good pre-veterinary programs. You can go to school wherever you would like, and you don't even have to major in pre-vet med or animal science, but there are real benefits to being in a program that has the kind of advising and courses and experiences available to you. Because as you can see, there's a lot going on just to get ready to apply. The other thing is, even in high school, you can start getting some animal experiences that you can then add to your veterinary school application. It can be a little tricky because a lot of places will require that volunteers and employees be 18 years of age or older, but not all of them. So if you do have the opportunity to shadow in a small animal clinic or milk cows on a nearby dairy, or be a interpreter for a zoo or any animal that involves any experience that involves you with animals, I encourage you to do that and to write it down. Write down the number of hours you spend there, write down what you do so you'll remember when it comes time to apply. The other thing, as I said, student loans and financial planning are really important for veterinary school. And it's not too early to start learning about that, so that when you make your choices about where to go to undergraduate, you can make them knowing that you have veterinary school in mind for after your undergraduate education. And that way you can look at the educational experience as a whole and make really good choices about that. In college, this is where you can start researching veterinary schools that would be of interest to you. Are there particular species that interest you? Some schools have more opportunities with those species. Do you want to be close to your family or as far away as possible? Do you want to be at an international school, or would you like to stay in the US? How much money is the tuition there? How difficult would it be for you to commute back home or commute to see other people that you would want to see? All of those questions are important in picking out schools that interest you. So early in your college experience, start thinking about those things so you can start looking up, well, what are the requirements for those schools? And am I sure that I'm meeting them as I go through my college education? Of course, you'll need to take your required courses and get the experiences that I mentioned. And again, this is something that you can do from your first semester in undergraduate. Likewise, it's really important to cultivate relationships with faculty and mentors so that when you get to the point of applying, they have a solid background knowledge of you and have a lot of good things to say about you. I mentioned getting experiences. At a minimum, I recommend getting 3 types of experiences and at least 100 hours in each. And what do I mean by types? at least one experience in a clinical setting. That could be small animal clinical setting, that could be food animal clinical setting, that could be exotics, that type of thing. And then at least 2 other experiences, either with different types of species. So if you did 100 hours working with small animals, then do at least 100 hours working in a food animal practice, or 100 hours working with an equine practice. Or consider getting other types of relevant experience. So for example, you could spend time working with a regulatory veterinarian at the FDA or the USDA or your state veterinarian's office. You could spend time in a research lab on your campus, learning the scientific method and how it is we go about making discovery. That actually counts toward your vet school application. You could work with a humane organization, understanding the nonprofit world and how that works in veterinary medicine. 3 different types of experiences, at least 100 hours of each. Again, in college, I can't emphasize enough the financial piece. This is your opportunity to take some classes about financial planning and also business management, because small animal practices, large animal practices, food animal practices, most of that private practice is really running a small business practicing veterinary medicine. So understand what you're signing up for. And finally, as long as the GRE is a requirement, you may want to do some practice work getting ready to take that standardized test, just as you might be doing to take the SAT. All right, so I get asked a lot, what's fun about being a vet? What's challenging about being a vet? What's interesting about being a vet? Since I have you, I thought I would share with you a few of the challenges and also a few of the really fun parts about being a veterinarian, maybe stuff you've never thought about before. So what's challenging? Well, the first part of vet med that's challenging is that it can have some really long hours. Just because your shift ends at 5 o'clock doesn't mean your patient stopped being sick at 5 o'clock. And it is our professional responsibility that once we've taken on the care of an animal, we've admitted that animal to our hospital, that we have to be there until that animal's stable or transferred to somebody else's care. And I can tell you that it was pretty typical for me to leave work in clinical practice an hour or 2, or sometimes even 3 or 4 after my shift was scheduled to end. And Murphy's Law always says that if you plan something really fun for after your shift, that will be the day that an emergency case comes in 10 minutes before you're supposed to leave, but it's your professional responsibility to be there. So we drank a lot of coffee and we did what we needed to do because we were there for the animals. Another challenge in clinical practice, at least, is that some owners can be very demanding and very difficult to work with. And it's hard. They're very invested in their pets. They're there because they love their pets and they want the best for them. And sometimes they don't know all the things that we do, or they weren't prepared for how expensive it can be. Because even though we charge a fraction of what human medicine does, our pets don't have insurance cards. So that's something that we have to be prepared to pay for. And it's tough and it can drain on you. So again, if you're not good at working with people or walking away from those types of situations, this can be particularly challenging in veterinary medicine. I also put on here a picture of the debt because the student debt crisis in veterinary medicine right now is at a critical point. So the average veterinary student graduating from a US veterinary school is leaving with about $170,000 in educational debt. And current starting salaries in small animal practice, which tends to pay the best of the clinical specialties, is somewhere around $70,000 to $75,000 a year. So there's a really big difference in the amount of debt that average students are coming out with versus the amount of money that they're able to make. And this leads to real consequences for them because it keeps them from doing things like buying houses or being able to afford to save for college for their own children or deal with other financial crises if they come up, like unexpected medical bills. And that's why I've mentioned on so many points in this presentation, understand the finances, make a plan, figure out how you can keep your debt low. Some other challenges. A veterinary education is a long haul. So you're looking at about 4 years of undergraduate and 4 years of veterinary school. And then if you wish to be a specialist, such as a cardiologist or a surgeon or a dermatologist, you're looking at another 4 to 6 years of training after that. And it's intense training. So there are a lot of things I missed out on in my 20s because I was doing my veterinary education there and I couldn't take a family vacation because I was on clinics in the hospital. I missed several Thanksgivings and Christmases because of my educational requirements. And you're giving up a lot to go to veterinary school. So again, make sure you're really passionate about it. We also have a real challenge in our profession with what's called work-life balance. So I mentioned that we stay pretty late at work. Well, we also tend to think about our cases a lot and be researching about them when we're on our days off. Sometimes we find ourselves going into the clinic on our days off to check on cases, make sure everything's going well. And that can be challenging when you add in kids or you add in your desire to do other hobbies or any number of other things. And so you really do have to work hard to strike that balance between working hard and doing a good job for your patients, which is really important, but also making sure that you're doing a good job for yourself and your family. And finally, another challenge we have in vet med right now is that we are one of the whitest and least ethnically diverse professions in the country. And it's something we're certainly thinking about. How do we better represent the communities that we serve by being the communities that we serve? But that's going to be a challenge that takes a while to turn around. So we're working really hard at it. But if you are a person of color, if you're another type of minority, it might be hard for you to feel like you see yourself in the profession. And we really hope to change that. But there's a lot that's fun about veterinary medicine too. So I want to leave you on a happy note about some of the cool things that we get to do as vets. First of all, I like to tease my dad, who's a human physician, that real doctors treat more than one species. And I think that's something really fun about our degree. We are licensed to treat every animal on the planet except humans. So maybe you do equine medicine for a while and say, you know, I'd like to switch to small animal medicine. Maybe you do small animal medicine for a while like me and then decide that you're interested in teaching and hey, there's a farm and now I get to play with sheep and help them feel better. So I really love the diversity of species. It's challenging, but I find that really interesting. You know, by learning about the animals and learning what kinds of species they are they herbivores or carnivores or omnivores, and what does it tell us about their nutrition and their physiology and how they work, and how do I use that to figure out what makes them tick and why they get sick? That's a fun challenge, and it's so cool to be able to treat all of these different species. Another thing I really like about vet med is that you don't have to stay in one kind of practice. So you can do clinical medicine, government medicine, military medicine, academia. You can work for drug companies and device manufacturers. There's so many different things you can do, changing up your career with a fair bit of flexibility. And I think that's a really great thing about our profession is that you can keep reinventing yourself with your very flexible degree. The other thing is if you remain on clinics, as so many of my colleagues have, even in the clinic, we wear a lot of hats. So on any given day, I might be a dentist, an anesthesiologist, a surgeon, a dermatologist, a pediatrician. I get to do a little bit of everything. And I think that's really fun about our profession, that you get to be flexible and that even within clinical medicine, you can develop areas that you particularly like and maybe shy away from others that you don't. So for example, I really liked cats and I do love dogs, but I tended to see a few more cats than my colleagues. I also really liked endocrinology, which is how hormones work to maintain our bodies in a normal way. And I really liked figuring out those sort of internal medicine and infection kind of cases. On the other hand, I'm not so fond of dermatology, which is the study of skin diseases, and surgery was not my favorite thing either. So again, I was able to focus on the things I liked and shy away a little bit from the things I didn't want to do because we have that flexibility. Another really cool thing about our profession is that veterinarians and vet staff are good people. They're kind, animal loving people, and they generally are really good people to work with. And it really makes work a nice place to be, whether you're working in a clinical setting or working in a non-clinical setting, vets are good people. I think for that reason, we're a very loved and trusted profession in this country, and that's a nice place to be in. You know, when I tell people that I'm a veterinarian, they want to chat me up and ask what I'm doing. And not everybody in every profession can say that. So that's just an overview. I wanted to make sure that we had time for questions. I can certainly take them either from the chat box or if anyone wants to get them to me by email. My email is sbalcom@umd.edu. And I would be happy to take them now, or if you have them in the future and you're watching this as a recording, that's fine too.
Well, I don't see any questions. We'll give one last chance while I am getting the link to our survey, but I want to thank you very much for that presentation. I've certainly learned a lot myself about being a vet, and I'm sure that our viewers, both current and in the future, will be learning quite a bit from that. So I am putting in the content, the survey information for everybody. Appreciate you finished the survey. And so we were wrapping up this program. Of course, it will live on our Facebook page, and we will be posting it after the festival on our YouTube page. So you'll be able to come back and watch it, and you will also be able to encourage other people who are interested in veterinarians to watch it. And even if they don't want to be a vet, if they just want to learn about what vets do, this is a great program, and encourage you to encourage others to watch it. So with that, we will wrap up our program. Thank you very much, Dr. Balcom, and thank you everybody for watching. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.